Okay, Kevin Perlmutter, the author of Brand Desire, a fellow Kogan Page author. Congratulations on your new book.
Thank you so much, Jay. It's so great to be here. It's so great to be speaking with you. I was aware of your book when I was writing mine and thrilled to see that we were with the same publisher.
Yes, yes. So writing a book, that's an honor. And I mean, at least I thought it was when I wrote my book. How did it come to be? What was it something that you pursued? Were you pursued to write the book? And how did that all work out?
Well, I was not pursued. I was the pursuer of a publisher. I launched my my business, Limbic Brand Evolution, in 2019. With that, I launched a new creation called Limbic Sparks Brand Strategy, which puts emotional insight at the center of how brands attract and retain customers. Emotional insight being something that is not leveraged to the extent that it should be in traditional brand strategy. And when I launched my company and launched this approach, I had in the back of my mind that I wanted to bring something new to the industry. I wanted to make a dent in the industry. And I thought maybe in the future, I would write a book, but that was so far out. But as a strategist, I was setting the future of a foundation that did not yet exist. So yeah. I created Limbic Sparks Brand Strategy. I trademarked both Limbic Brand Evolution, but also Limbic Sparks is a trademark of mine. A few years later, I launched a podcast, which was called Let's Talk Limbic Sparks, talking with brand leaders. And I built up to the point where in January of 2023, I put pen to paper and started writing my book.
Right. And so, okay, so now I come across your book. I come across it from Jeremy Goldman from eMarketer. I saw your interview. I'd love to understand a little bit more about Limbic Sparks. I haven't yet read the book, but talk about what it is and how you came to that insight.
I started as a traditional brand strategist. I worked in advertising for many, many years. Back in 2007, I joined Interbrand, one of the largest global brand consultancies. I learned how the most valuable global brands stay strong. And I actually had the opportunity to create and launch their first ever global customer experience practice, taking me as far away from advertising as I wanted to get, which was amazing. I then, in 2014, joined a sonic branding music studio, where I was chief strategist, chief innovation officer, and I created and led a research capability that I did in partnership with an outside neuroscience-based research firm, because music, like a lot of stimulus, hits us very fast at the subconscious level, and we have an instinctive emotional response that guides our conscious feelings, associations, and behaviors. I learned a lot of this while working at the studio. I learned a lot of this from my behavioral science mentors when we created this research approach rooted in subconscious understanding. And as I learned this, I started to realize that traditional brand strategy, what I was taught, what I was practicing for most of my career, was missing this behavioral science understanding and insight.
So are you saying that brand strategy is BS?
I am not saying that brand strategy is BS.
Well, it is. It's actually
love the pun. Love the pun. What I'm saying is that there are many ways to go about brand strategy, and it can be more effective if you understand how the brain works and apply an understanding of behavioral science to what you're doing.
Great. Okay, that makes sense. So now let's test some ideas, because I feel like we're going to be sparring partners in a nice, friendly way. I call myself your brand coach, and historically I have helped people to create pretty logos, pretty messages, and consistent looks and feels and all that nice stuff that really doesn't contribute much. If you don't have something to say, if you don't have a product that works, if you product, price, place, promotion, if you don't have all of those things, the pretty brand doesn't work. And so much so with this branding approach that I'm actually thinking to myself, what even is a brand these days. So to connect with what you just told me about sort of this emotional response and that you get from music, in your mind, what is an effective brand today? It's clearly not, the kerning of your font, even though everyone follows the same sort of like clean, if your brand looks a little outdated, you got to redo the logo, and then you pay like the Gap paid, and it's good for 6 days. The brand of the Gap is it's certainly a lot. The logo does mean a lot in Gap's case, because there was a visceral reaction when they mess with that. But really, what is a brand in your mind these days?
Well, first of all, a brand is a individualized set of associations that you have from your collective exposure and experience to a particular entity. That to me is a brand. But to tie this answer to your last question, which is what is limbic sparks? To me, limbic sparks are what you feel when emotional motivation meets brand desire. When you feel instinctively like this is a brand that you want in your life, you've been attracted to this, it sparked your interest, you want to check it out, and if the experience is good, you will continue to use that brand in your life.
Awesome. So now give me, I'm sure when I wrote my book, they said, give me examples, excuse me. So give me a few examples of brands that apply this limbic sparks sort of intuitively as part of their DNA. Like what are some of the brands that make us feel what you're describing?
Well, there are many brands in the world that do this. For me personally, a brand like Ben & Jerry's does this for me. Ben & Jerry's is a brand that not only has incredible ice cream flavors, not only has incredible design aesthetic, not only has an incredible environmental experience, great naming for their products, but additionally, they are a company with very strong values. They focus on social justice. They focus on environmental protection. They stand for things that fit with my values that I believe in. And as a result of the collective experience and exposure that I have to that brand, it is one that I consistently go to as a first choice for ice cream.
How do you feel about the core product that they have, where it's like totally chocolate and caramel, like in the middle? Do you like that core?
The core one is really good. Fish food is among my favorites of all time. I'm a fish food kind of a person. It does have the chocolate ice cream, the caramel, and the little chocolate fish, which I really like.
So we can get along on that.
We're going to look great. And if you ever visit me when I'm in Vermont, we'll go to Burlington and go to the scoop shop and get it straight from the
like from the source. I've been there.
But so in my book, Brand Desire, I mention a number of brands that create limbic sparks for me. Ben & Jerry's being one of them, Marriott Bonvoy for other reasons. These are brands that do things that are a part of my life, that contribute value to my life. They make me feel like I want to keep it in my life because of the instinctive emotional value that it brings to me. But in my book, I also have 6 specific chapters with case studies. So I go through the process of creating Limbic Sparks brand strategy, and for each part of the process, there is a specific case study chapter or more. And I can talk about a few of those if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd like you to, because my biggest curiosity, I'm representing the Marketing Accountability Council, and I want to talk about that. But let's first, before we talk about that, let's just talk about Ben & Jerry's when it was Ben & Jerry's, and then let's talk about Ben & Jerry's, a company of Unilever. Mm-hmm. And Unilever is a company that notoriously has connected purpose with their products, and I think I personally applaud them for that. So talk about the limbic sparks that happened when the founders and their belief system at Ben & Jerry's versus when Ben & Jerry's now is a part of a big entity, also a big entity that doesn't always agree with Ben and Jerry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because what I'm curious about is, a corporation says, "Hey, Kevin, I heard you can help us create limbic sparks," and then you go in there and you're like, "There's nothing to work with here." Right. Or maybe there is something to work with. Maybe I'm wrong. But I want to sort of marry sort of like the entrepreneurial spirit that created the limbic spark, Ben and Jerry creating ice cream in Vermont for a reason, and then I want to talk about how corporate companies are different from that. Can you create limbic? How and when can you create limbic sparks?
I think everything you're talking about comes down to company values and the values of the people who are running it and adherence to those values. So getting back to your Ben and Jerry's example, and I'm not intimately familiar with every aspect of that case, but what I do know is that, and again, I say, I know, so I'm going to be 80% accurate here based on what I know.
I'm an 80-20 kind of guy.
What I do know is that when Ben and Jerry sold to Unilever, they were able to negotiate that their brand values remain intact, and that certain things that I'm not aware of the specifics of about how their brand lives in the world would not change despite the fact that they were part of Unilever. They managed to pull that off. I don't even know when they sold to Unilever. It's got to be 20 plus or minus years. And the brand has remained intact. That is an extreme example. Patagonia is another example of a founder that would not let his brand be sold off to a corporation that would deviate from their values. Those are extreme examples. Not every brand is a Ben and Jerry's, and not every brand is a Patagonia. But when I'm working with my clients, one of the first things that I check out before they're my clients is whether or not I feel like they have a good product and service and values that I can live with, that I'm good with. I've turned away working with clients where either I thought their product was not where it needed to be in the marketplace, or their brand experience was too negative in the marketplace, or their corporate values or what they aligned themselves with in the world was not in sync with my values, and I didn't feel like I wanted to expend energy helping them get that word out. So that's just a little point about when I'm working with clients, how I make selections. But one of the premises, one of the in my book is that you can create limbic sparks if you attract people instinctively to your brand based on a shared emotional motivation, an idea that you both believe in and that you're both trying to achieve, and people feel like it was the brand was designed with you in mind. I can't, in my work, exclusively help a brand that has a bad product or a bad experience. I've been fortunate. The clients that I've worked with, a couple dozen clients that I've worked with, all come to me with a great product, a great experience, and a brand that needs to be put in the world in a way that reveals who they truly are and how good they truly are. Most of the clients that work with me start off with, we have this great product, this great service. We want more people to know about it. Why aren't we connecting with more people? That's where we usually start. So I'm not in the business of fixing all the problems that a company has. I am in the business of fixing their how they express themselves as an organization to the world to attract and retain customers to the greatness that already exists.
I think that's amazing. And I think I'm just going to move on to Red Lobster for a second, because this is something that I've struggled with for a long time.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, I've had plenty of clients, and I've had plenty of clients that may not have a product that is relevant in the marketplace, may not have a specific customer that they're targeting. I hate using the word targeting because I feel like it's like but it's the industry term. And, and then they hire me, and then you put out all the branding and stuff like that, and it does nothing. Well, obviously it does nothing because you haven't really addressed some of the core problem definition that you need to as a company. And then the place where a marketer typically sits is a place of frustration, even in corporations. Like, keep in mind, I worked at MasterCard, and I could tell you for a fact that when the CMO of MasterCard sat at the executive table, he was not taken as seriously as the chief product officer at MasterCard. There's like an inferiority complex of marketing, and we create the product, we price the product, we do this, we do that. Your marketing, you promote it, and marketing goes to that side. So basically, what you said is that you work with companies that have that are built around the 4 Ps, what we believe marketing to be: product, price, place, promotion. And then you can help a company with a good offering to get a broader distribution because of a good reason. So the Red Lobster story is interesting, and I've been.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Before you go into Red Lobster, can I comment on something you just said?
Sure.
Before I lose it and we get too far. You were accurate in what I said with respect to what I can do in my role, and the clients that I work with. But in my book, what I talk about is the chief marketing officer's role, and how the chief marketing officer's role can become more valuable within an organization, and how they can propel greater success within their organization with the level of influence that you were saying a lot of them don't have. And that is by bringing in customer insight and emotional insight about the people they're trying to reach. So one of the things that I talk about in one of the later chapters in my book is that if you as a brand leader embrace a customer-centric mindset and use research and insights to understand what matters most to the audiences that you're trying to reach, then you have 2 ways of driving success for your organization. You bring those customer insights to your organization so that the shared success within your organization happens because the people who are developing product, the people who are developing marketing, the people who are guiding the company and trying to drive growth are fueled with an understanding of what matters most to customers so that they can fine-tune everything that they're working on. And then that delivers itself to brand experiences in marketing that customers see, get attracted to, and have good experiences from, and that success then fuels company success as well. So
and that leads to financial success.
It leads there's this whole discussion in the marketplace that's been going on for a decade about the rise and fall of the chief marketing officer and the tenure of a chief marketing officer and the lack of influence of a chief marketing officer. But the one thing that could help a chief marketing officer, regardless of all of their other responsibilities, which are very scattered and splintered throughout the industry, is customer insight. They are the voice of the customer internally in their organization and can help use that information and influence to drive what customers feel and prospects feel outside the organization.
I love that. And I am working on a project that will fundamentally change customer insight. And we can get into that a little later. But let's talk
Red Lobster. Let's go back to Red Lobster.
Yeah, let's go back to Red Lobster. But I mean, I think that we're seeing the whole limbic sparks thinking. I think we both do it, which is good. So, but before we go to Red Lobster, we're going to talk about credibility. So basically, what you're saying is the chief marketing officer that earns their seat at the table and is backed by evidence that leads to tangible outcomes will be seen as successful. The chief marketing officer that is just raising their hands and being like, I can't do anything about this, is not going to earn that seat at the table. I think that's a safe conclusion.
Effectively, that's what we're saying. I mean, if the chief marketing officer has customer insight and has the ability to use that to fuel how the organization puts things into the market for the greater success of internal metrics and customer acquisition and retention, that's an amazing place to be. And nobody else in the organization other than maybe departments that report to or sit around the chief marketing officer, are responsible for gathering that customer insight and using it as a driving force for company success.
Okay, so we could talk about that for a long time, and we will. But first,
Red on that as well. So let's go.
Red Lobster. So the Red Lobster story is interesting. Red Lobster had this decline. It wasn't the same Red Lobster that I don't know if you went to Red Lobster as a kid. I went maybe once or twice.
Yeah, same here.
But I do know that they have those great biscuits. And anyway, big private equity firm buys up Red Lobster and literally sort of cannibalizes Red Lobster. Basically, the specifics were at a certain point, they needed the individual Red Lobsters needed to pay rent to the entity, and that rent cannibalized Red Lobster, which led to basically bankruptcy. In addition to that, the product declined.
Too much free shrimp.
Too much free. Well, the free shrimp
was helping them go under.
well, I read a lot about that, and I thought that too. But the truth is that free shrimp was a part of it, but it ultimately was just trying to breathe life into a dying system that was being extracted by Red Lobsters paying rent to their private equity owner.
Mm-hmm.
And basically sucking all the life out of this place. So now we have this new CEO coming in, and I follow TikToks, and people are getting all excited about the boil. So they are now doing all different kinds of boils, which is, speaking of limbic sparks, that's trend chasing. Not in a bad way. It's great. I as a person who hangs out with my son, I love to take him to these boil places. You go there and you get this big bag filled with seafood, and have the Old Bay and the butter and all that stuff, and then they put it on the table. And I'm willing to bet that the people at Red Lobster were able to understand the demographics of people that go to Red Lobster and what they like. The economics of the fact that a boil isn't that expensive to pull off, understand the dynamics of the fact that the people who are at the restaurant might have believed that Red Lobster lost something when all this extraction of Red Lobster was happening. Mm-hmm. So they announced this boil thing, and the internet's going, or at least it went crazy for a few weeks, really getting excited about the boils. So let me ask you a question. Is that an application of what you're talking about? That's question number one. And question number two is, if that is a part of the limbic sparks that we're talking about, is that enough when the fundamentals of the business are a little bit in trouble?
Well, so many questions, we could spend a semester answering it.
Sure.
So, but let me answer it. So a couple of things. One is the fact that they understood their audience and looked at the marketplace of seafood and what was going to be exciting, and they lit on this idea that the boil is something that would attract attention and that it's working, is a good thing.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what they did. I'm going to make this up because I'm hearing about it for the first time. I'm assuming they studied their audience. They studied the marketplace. They studied what things were hot, what things were not. They needed to revitalize their brand, and they realized that this boil could be something that was of great interest. Maybe they did some market research to test it, to prove it out before they rolled it out to all their locations. And then they, clearly had to set up all the distribution, everything they needed to put this in place, and they did it, and it's working. But that's a product solution. And it may, as you said, be a trend that fades. My question would be, what does the brand stand for? Because the Red Lobster brand, as you indicated, had become a little stale and dated and has operational issues, which I can't help with. But they also now have lit on a new idea, and maybe their brand in the future stands for exciting seafood. Making that up. I don't know what that is. That's not a brand strategy that I would recommend, but it transitions from something that was dated and seen as of the past to something that is where you can have exciting seafood in your area that you may not be able to get elsewhere unless you go to New Orleans. I don't know. So I'm, again, making stuff up, but I see there's something there that they're doing that is reflective of an understanding of their audience, which is a really good place to start.
That is, and I'm impressed with the CEO of Red Lobster. He's taking the approach that the Brian Niccol took, he was the Chipotle CEO, who is now the Starbucks CEO.
And he did amazing things at Chipotle during the pandemic.
Absolutely.
To accelerate digital plans and digital engagement and keep that brand vital and actually create stronger connections. Burritos for Heroes or something like that. All the things that they did during the pandemic were amazing. And that was a reflection of that was Olympic Sparks' reflection of, hey, brands, I believe, brands should exist to make people's lives better. Yep. Sounds obvious, but not all do. Some create a lot of frustration, some are irrelevant. What Chipotle did during the pandemic was a quick pivot, understanding their audience, meeting them where they were, and being able to serve them in a way that was in line with their brand, but also staying in step with where people's minds were and hearts were and needs were at the time. So I'm sorry, back to Red Lobster.
No, we don't have to go back to Red Lobster. I mean, at the end of the day, what Brian also did, which is what the CEO of Red Lobster, and I'm forgetting his name, but Brian took it upon himself to speak sincerely to his audience when they had a controversy. The controversy was that some YouTuber or TikToker went in there and they're like, they're shrinking the portions. And Brian went in, he did a thorough investigation of that allegation. He took it very seriously, and he didn't do a PR statement. He didn't do some polished campaign that says, whatever it may be. He viscerally went out in there and recorded a video without proper, a proper set or whatever it may be. He may have held up his phone and he said it. And I think that era of truth in marketing and in communications is the era we are entering. I've started the Marketing Accountability Council. People say to me sometimes, Jay, you're a little rough around the edges with the way you're writing. And I'm like, exactly. Like, I'm not waiting until the idea is perfect before I'm validating it factually. Yeah. I'm checking my sources. But you know what? Sometimes the polished study, like the studies I did in corporate America, where you're spending 6 months to make sure that legal and compliance and this and that have seen it. By the time it's done, it's either outdated or the insights are so sanitized that they're not as meaningful. So when you start to see companies like Chipotle, like Red Lobster, that are going to the streets, that are, saying, I'm feeling something and I'm going to share something, that are not as strict with the editorial calendar where it's like on Tuesday we do this, on Wednesday we do this, on Thursday we do this. Like, I'm all about continuity, but I'm also about when there's something that needs to be said, let's just say it to our audience. And it's about respecting our audience. So I think it's a very important shift. Have you noticed that shift in any of the brands you work with? Going more direct?
I noticed the shifts. Absolutely. I noticed the shifts in brands that I work with, but you're causing me to think of a very newsworthy thing that just happened over the weekend with Astronomer and this whole Kiss Cam Coldplay thing that's going on. And I don't know if you saw the video that they put out over the weekend with Gwyneth Paltrow. And I thought that was an amazing way for them to seize the moment. This is a company that most people have never heard of. It was catapulted into the public eye. They were dealing with controversy because of actions taken by some of their employees that became not only public, but like infamous memes all over the internet. I mean, it was hysterical. And they had an opportunity. They had to have, in their crisis meetings over the weekends, they had to have they had to say, what are we going to do about this? Do we hire a crisis PR firm? Do we apologize? Do we do this? All the scenarios that you can imagine that they were thinking about. And somebody, their agency or someone, came up with this idea of why don't we seize the moment to gain awareness for what we're all about, and put together this video, for those who haven't seen it, that was Gwyneth Paltrow sitting at a desk. And for those who don't know, Gwyneth Paltrow is the ex-wife of Coldplay's lead singer, Chris Martin. So that was an amazing get. And she was titled temporary employee, in quotes, in the video. And she said, and she addressed questions, but really didn't address questions. So we've been getting a lot of questions, and one of them was, I don't remember the questions that were on the screen, but how are you handling this controversy? It says, oh, it's amazing that so many people are interested in Astronomer right now, and you want to know more about us. I bet the other question is, how's your social media team holding up? Oh, so you're interested in going to our conference in September? There's still space. And it was just, you have to check it out. It was amazingly done. They met the moment, and they're a brand that people will know forevermore.
That is great, making lemonade out of lemons. Because at the end of the day, the truth is that the target audience of Astronomer is not the people that were so upset about or whatever, reacting to the infidelity or whatever it may be. The truth is it's a bunch of people that need to pipe in data into their systems. And I spent a great deal of time trying to figure out what this company did after that happened. And, I think I'm going to transition a little bit to data. So you talked about limbic sparks, and you talked about, insights and all that kind of stuff. What do you think about the term dirty data?
Dirty data?
Yeah, meaning
I don't love it. Well, how are you defining it?
I'm actually going to look up how I'm defining it right now, because I'm working on an article, and I'm going to tell you some of my ideas of what dirty data is. 1 second, please. So let's think about it. Okay, dirty data is the idea that you have inaccurate information. It could be mistyped, misreported, or flat out wrong. You have incomplete data, which is partial answers, missing fields. You have duplicate data, which is the same person in 3 CRMs. You have outdated data, which is chasing behavior from 2018. Like, think about like, I'm getting these political messages that are from the other party. Like, how did I get onto that? Bias data with built-in prejudice, etc. Fabricated data. I had this guy named Augustine Fu on the Mac, and he said, in some cases, 90% of ad clicks and 90% of survey fill outs are done by bots. And then there's the even worse thing, which is the consentless data, which you could buy from the big data brokers, where you're not even sure where it came from. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot on the Mac, and we've had a weekly series of people that sort of understand this, and like, what are the consequences of stuff like that entering your system? And the reason why I bring it up is, from what I gather, what Astronomer does is it cleans up the data. You can't take data from, like when I was at MasterCard, you had cardholder data, you had data from Facebook, you had data from Twitter, you had a census data. Not all data is created equally. You have to sanitize it or make sure that it's parallel, let's call it. But that doesn't solve for the fact that the underlying data that is in our system may or may not be true. And that's what dirty data is. And so when you think about that, the dirty data feedback loop, my hypothesis is, if you have dirty data, it leads to bad decisions. When you make bad decisions, you break trust. Broken trust leads to less data sharing. Less data equals worse models. And the reason why I'm so afraid about this is because when you look at AI, and you look at the conclusions that are made from AI, it's coming from the general internet. but you don't know where these things are coming from unless you ask, what is the source?
Yeah. So you've covered so much there, and I know what you mean by dirty data now. And absolutely, it goes without saying that if you're making decisions off of bad data, then you're making bad decisions. And so I have very strong opinions about research and data. I don't focus as much on all of the data that you're talking about, which is the data you get from sources that scan the internet and crawl and customer and match customers with zip codes and all of that wonderful stuff that amazing people do on the marketing side. But in my book, Brand Desire, I have an entire chapter dedicated to using research to uncover emotional insights.
Good.
And one of the first things I say in that chapter is just because you have research doesn't mean that it's reliable, because you need to understand where it came from, what its source was, if you were using the right methodology. There are 3 research study design questions that I talk about at the head of that chapter, which is you must be talking with the right people, you must be asking the right questions, and you must be using the right methodology. And since my entire approach is about uncovering emotional insights, and emotions happen at an instinctive subconscious level, and when people tell you about their emotions, they are way past the point of those emotions occurring and often post-rationalized, you need to be using research techniques that actually get to the emotional instinct. You need to be using behavioral science, neuroscience-based research techniques. And in this chapter, I talk about the difference between implicit research and explicit research, implicit being emotional, instinctive, and explicit being more survey-based questions that are post-rationalized responses, and very good for a lot of use cases, but not for uncovering emotional insights. I talk about implicit association testing, which is a methodology that I'm very familiar with and use quite often. I talk about metaphor elicitation, which is an ideation methodology that taps into the subconscious emotional instincts, and a few other things. But I am very much of the belief, as it sounds like you are as well, is that the wrong data leads to the wrong conclusions. And I'll add with one more thing. Just because you have data doesn't mean you have insight.
Well, of course, there's a whole
comes out
pyramid.
of data by people who study that data and connect
insight,
that.
knowledge, wisdom.
Yeah,
you know?
so yeah, I have very strong opinions, and
you do,
and about 5,500 words talking about it in the book.
Wonderful. Well, listen, I will be ordering it. You know why? Because I agree with you, and you really earned your credibility in my mind based on that answer. Why?
Oh, thank you. Because
I watch people being interviewed all the time, and then they say, how are you feeling today after the tragedy yesterday? And then they pause, and then they, for 10 seconds, like, I'm feeling really good. What the hell happened in that 10 seconds?
You're like, what you wanted people to think after you spoke.
Exactly. So the idea that you ask people, what is connecting with you emotionally about this brand is garbage. What you described is very valid, and I want to introduce you to a company that I am on the board of advisors for, that really addresses it head on. And after this session, I will send you a little thing that you'll be able to experience. It's called Agile Brain. And Agile Brain is the brain child of someone named J.D. Pincus, who is a esteemed researcher. And he came up with this idea that we will ask one question, but the way we will calculate your emotional needs and wants is based on how you react to images. So the images come by fast, and you get to decide which image connects with you. And based on how you do the Agile Brain, we will determine which of 12 dimensions of emotion light up. And based on those 12 dimensions of emotion, we can really get to something that is a lot more specific and actionable than if we asked you, how are you feeling about this? So I think that, plus some of the quantitative and qualitative things that you likely described in that chapter is really critical. Let's get more tactical now. So let's imagine you did the research and you did all those ideas. I have all my methodologies for, I use the fishbone. I use what they call the nesting doll strategy, where the company, the person has a problem and the company has the problem, and if you solve the problem for the person, then you end up solving the problem for the company. Then the company wins and the consumer wins. That's the nesting doll. Mm-hmm. I do all these kinds of things. What is your sort of like go-to way to quantify your strategy of releasing these limbic moments and brand desires? Like how would you put it on one page?
Well, there are 3 steps to sparking brand desire that are the pillars of Limbic Sparks brand strategy, and they are focus, connect, and evolve. And focus is the first phase of work. It's all around insights discovery, and it goes through a lot of the things that anyone in our field would think to do, but with a very specific focus on uncovering emotional insights and using methodologies and questions and research techniques that get to those emotional insights in a proper way. A lot of brand strategy work traditionally is done talking with company insiders, understanding what they want to say about their brand, and it's kind of shallow when it comes to customer insight, specifically emotional insight. The output of focus is getting to what I call a shared emotional motivation. And this is missing from traditional brand strategy. The shared emotional motivation is the core insight that identifies what the brand and its customer are most motivated to achieve individually and with each other. So I'll give you an example. I worked with a company called Blue Ridge. Blue Ridge is a SaaS supply chain management software platform. We went through insights discovery, and we discovered that they are motivated. They are in the world to make the lives better of people who do inventory planning. And the shared emotional motivation is improve planning precision. So getting to this idea, understanding that they are attempting to get more precise and help their clients and customers get more precise, and that the whole entire goal and job of the people who they're trying to work with is to have precise inventory levels across thousands of SKUs, multiple warehouses, and seasonal variations. And that is not a brand strategy. That is not, improving precision planning isn't a tagline. It isn't a whole brand strategy. It is a core insight that allows you to get to the rest of the work. And then you move into the second phase, which is connect, which is developing that brand strategy, which is about strengthening connections by standing for the emotional benefits that people care about the most. And it leads you to the core brand benefits, which are emotional benefits, not just features of the products and services. It leads you to personality and voice traits, positioning statement, but it also leads you to the brand idea or customer-facing tagline, which in my work is one and the same. I know in a lot of places the strategist comes up with an idea and then the copywriter comes up with a tagline. In my work, they're one and the same. So the core brand idea has a definition that is narrower and different than traditional brand strategy in my work. In traditional brand strategy, the brand idea may be an about us statement. It could be, we do this. We, for Blue Ridge, when I first started working with them, the supply chain management company, is we put you at the center of supply chain success, which is a we statement. It's accurate. It's leaning toward a benefit, but it's a little bit generic, and it's talking about you. In the work that we did with them, when we did all this insights discovery, we understood that their core audience is all about this planning precision, and their jobs are on the line. And if they are imprecise too much, then either the head of sales is upset because they don't have product on the shelf that needs to be sold, or if they have too little. If they have too much, the CFO is upset because they're tying up cash flow with stuff that's not moving off the shelf. And in some cases, it could be detrimental to the health and future of a company because they have spent too much on inventory that's not going anywhere. So they are in a very important position. And I heard an insight from someone I spoke with, a customer of this client, who said, before Blue Ridge, I was the guy who always got in trouble at work. And after Blue Ridge, I'm the hero because I have all the information that helps us always have the inventory levels that are needed. And that transition helped us go to a brand idea of be supply chain invincible. So be supply chain invincible meets the definition of a Limbic Sparks brand idea because it is a compelling brand benefit and invitation. It reflects the shared emotional motivation of wanting precise inventory levels that both the company and its customers are striving for. And it leads to a brand idea that is a benefit and invitation based on what we know they emotionally desire, what they are emotionally motivated to achieve in their world.
Kevin, I'm so glad I found you because we are so aligned.
I love hearing that. Thank you.
I mean, it's really beautiful because when you told me about that first statement, I'm just like, oh. And then, like, you know, when we got to the second,
the first bookend. The other
yes.
bookend is the brand idea. There's a lot of stuff in the middle, but you need.
Yeah, of course, I got it. But you know, but there's a lot of things about my methodology that align. Like because when you said the customer is the hero of the story. I'm a big proponent of the story brand framework, where a character has a problem and meets a guide who understands their fear and has a plan that leads to success and helps them avoid failure. Well, that's what you did. You understood the problem from the person who was experiencing the company and made that person. You didn't make that person. The person told you, volunteered that the company helped them to look better. That's great. But the other thing that I use with that is Seth Godin's simple marketing promise. My product is for people who believe. I'll focus on people who want. And I promise that engaging with what I make will help you get. You did that as well in your methodology. But in addition to all the stuff that I talk about, when I wrote the book, I wasn't as in depth with the Agile Brain emotion stuff. As a matter of fact, I met the Agile Brain people after I wrote my book, and I realized that if about the quantifiable research-oriented process that we could have followed with Agile Brain. So it appears that what you have in your book with all those methodologies that you talked about earlier, it takes it to another level. And I like being aligned with people that take it to another level.
Thank you for that. So, to cap it off without too much talk, the third phase of Evolve is applying that grand strategy to brand expression and brand experiences. So how do you take that idea, bring it into visual identity, bring it into brand experiences, bring it into brand messaging? And there's a lot that I talk about in the book to help brands get through that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and so, you know, in my brand strategy in 3 steps, it's identity, intention, and implementation. It aligns perfectly with what you just said. I mean, you know, the identity, I believe that companies are made of people. And, you know, when you get to the core values of the company and you don't ignore the people, you're doing what you described. So
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
In conclusion, we're singing from the same playbook, and I'd like to congratulate you for A, authoring your book, B, for really, you know, listen, I wrote my book in the pandemic. It was a lot. It took a lot of time, a lot of energy. There's a lot more editing and refinement than you could ever imagine. You know, I could tell in this interview that the rigor that you went through will pay off in spades. So
thank you so much.
So yeah, so thanks for coming on, and tell people where they could find you and your book and all that.
Well, I again, thank you for having me. It is such a joy to have this conversation with you. It's different than most interviews. We got into some really meaty stuff, and I so enjoyed it. My book is called Brand Desire: Spark Customer Interest Using Emotional Insights. You can learn more about it and see where to buy it at branddesirebook.com. branddesirebook.com. That also will take you to my core company website. So from there, you could click into Limbic Brand Evolution and see everything else that I have going on. And please connect with me on LinkedIn at Kevin Perlmutter. It would be wonderful to meet some new people who like Jay and I share this these limbic sparks for this form of brand strategy.
Great. And thank you for joining us. And I'm sure we'll be talking.
Thank you.